rejection types are disengaging on micro levels constantly. I have a very limited sense of what my personhood is. And I realize, I'm not really offering anything for you to be a part of in me.
It looks contradictory to say that twos, this relational connecting type, is actually very disconnected.
I'm not cutting you off because I'm having this reaction to something there. It's like we never even touched each other.
Yeah, it's like a retro amputation.
Yes. And it's hard to...
Amputation, that's good.
The big hormone enneagram.
Hi, I'm John Lukovich, sexual self-pres 4-5 link, 4-5-8 trifix.
Hi, I'm David Gray, self-pres sexual 9-1, 9-7-4 trifix.
What up, it's Emeka. I'm an 8-7, sexual self-pres with 8-5-4 fixes.
Hi, I'm Nancy. I am a self-pres social 3, wing 4, with a 3-6-9 trifix. If you like our podcast, guys, make sure you go like and subscribe on the Apple Podcast app. And if you really like us, you should definitely leave us a review.
Because a lot of people ran with, the last episode that we did, or not the last episode, the episode that just dropped, the missing pieces, on some of the comments I made about you and Nancy missing rejection. And people were like, well, I cut people out of my life. And I was like, you know what? Like, we've been talking about doing this, but we need a lot more nuance as to what is happening with rejection, because it's not like, oh, I cut off a relationship, but that's a part of it.
Right.
But, even just observing myself as a sexual 8 and just sort of like, something about the description of sexual 8, sort of like overexertion in terms of trying to capture as much attention or occupy as much attention. I was like, you know what, that's incomplete in a sense as to what 8 is trying to do, what my own internal experience of what I'm trying to do, or what 8s in general seem to be trying to do. And it's this sense of like trying to find these leverage points that can make a big impact. But to me, it's like, I want to do as little as possible. Like for me, it's about like these linchpin positions that can generate a lot with very little input. So
Partly psychological leverage or something.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't experience myself as, typically like in a relationship context, like, I was just reflecting on like this thing of sexual 8 wanting to occupy as much attention. I was like, I don't think that's quite fully it. Like the rejection piece is the part that adds a lot more nuance, in my opinion, as to what's going on, in the sense that I'm not doing that much, but the whole idea is I want to do as little as possible and have the most effect. And that is sort of like the withholding aspect of the rejection piece, is like, you're not really going to be a part of me or really touch me, because of the leverage and the withholding of rejection types ensures that that separation continues, that they have as much impact as they can have on the object while remaining untouched. And I was like, whoa, that's what rejection is doing.
John, Emeka was talking about how some attachment types responded to the conversation about me and Nancy not cutting people off or something. So they were saying they do that, so we wanted to make some further distinctions.
That they as attachment types cut people off?
Yeah, right.
Or they're saying that, I'm an attachment type and I don't have any rejection types in my... I think what we were saying is that if you have a rejection wing or you have a rejection secondary fixed, then you might have some elements of, rejection in the way that you have relational dynamics. And there were some people that commented like, I don't have any rejection going on, and like rejection are a missing piece, but I don't have any problem cutting people off. And so it just made me think, what is rejection really doing? And so I've been thinking about this stuff for a while. And so it's like, all right, it's time for us to do a fucking call about rejection. I think it's going to take multiple calls because there's a lot of, there just needs a lot more nuance as to what's going on.
All right. This is Big Hormone Enneagram. We're back, and please buy my book. I would really appreciate it. Recommend it to people that you're friends with. And write reviews for me, please. I have been doing a study group where we go section by section through my book, and it's been really great. I give I kind of expound on stuff from the book, and there's questions and observations and meditation and breakout groups and things like this, and it's fun, and it's only $15 a class via Zoom. You can reach me through my website or on Instagram or on Facebook.
Is it on your website? Do you have a page for it on your website?
I think so. Maybe
I would take that as a no.
Yeah, it's probably a no. I'll go. Yeah, I gotta go make some links. But
okay, so we got DAA, Dark Arts Academy. We typed. Who have we typed recently? We typed Marina Abramovic. That was a really interesting class, and we're gonna.
Rickman.
Alan Rickman, Andrew Tate. But I mean, just to circle back to why I give a fuck about Dark Arts Academy is that you don't know the Enneagram unless you're using the Enneagram. In order to use the Enneagram, you need to be able to see and observe with the Enneagram. And it's like these personality types are like languages or like instruments that you have to learn how to hear and you have to learn how to see in order for you to be able to start to see these types as like three-dimensional manifestations. And it brings the Enneagram to life when you can actually recognize what rejection is or frustration is or what the head center is or what the body center is as it's happening in someone real time. And so this understanding is what allows us to be able to use the Enneagram to get insights from the Enneagram, or even to be able to pinpoint, what is happening in yourself or somebody else in terms of being able to make inner work changes. Is this ability to actually see and hear with the Enneagram. So that's what we're learning, and we're using these celebrities as learning tools. And if you are someone who wants to get typed, you've been trying to figure out your typed, you can get typed by Enneagrammer. We have discounts for those DAA members along with other perks. You can get typed all the trifix, instinct stacking, everything that we talk about. You can get all those answers at Enneagrammer.com.
I'll also add to the dark arts thing. Like, all right, looking at something like, Instagram, where you see all that terrible shit. It's like one of the things that a lot of even, so-called professional teachers do is they just like fuck up not being able to recognize the energies, the qualities of the types or anything like that, like just in the world, right? Like,
yeah.
It's a huge, huge problem. So anyway, it's just like, if you take teaching or, guiding people with the Enneagram or making content around the Enneagram, fucking brush up on dark arts, because it's like your shit will probably be inaccurate, otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, it's one reason why, for example, there's a bunch of teachers that have these panels, where they'll have so-called a bunch of fives. And
they're all nines.
That are all nines or sixes.
Or sixes.
Yeah, and it's just creating confusion because you've got nines and sixes talking about what it's like to be a five, and that's just going to make more nines and sixes think they're fives.
And speaking to that, Josh's What It's Like to Be You podcast, the reason, because it's sort of like doing panels, he's doing one-on-one interviews. The reason those interviews are so illuminating is that when you actually talk to someone who is accurately typed and who has the ability to articulate and go inward and talk about their own type structure, there is so much to learn from that. And so these type panels, if they actually had accurately typed people on those type panels, like you can learn the Enneagram so much when you can observe a type that you can accurately recognize as that type, and that person who can articulate how they function. There's so much to learn from that. But I mean, you're not learning anything from some 9 who thinks that they're a 5. They're not talking about fiveness.
They're not.
Right.
So yeah, but you can check out, this podcast is so useful because we are talking about from a place of accuracy with the types, and Josh's podcast is also great. I mean, he's really great at interviewing, far better than all of us combined.
Yeah, and it's a different learning thing too, of like observing and commenting on like some videos versus asking the person through their experience. And
Yes.
They complement each other, but they're different. And so,
Right.
yeah, there's a lot of tools out there. I mean, a lot of people fucking hate us, but we are collectively, whatever these things we're all doing together are like laying out so much fucking info.
We're like, it's not even close because I mean, we if I had what we've been producing the last couple years, if I had this at my disposal when I started the Enneagram, I'd feel so lucky because I mean, it was just like a desert back then, like trying to figure things out. So like, there's so many avenues for people to learn. Like we have accurate typings, we have interviews, we have our podcast, we have DAA, we got John's study group. Like there's just so many. If you really give a shit about the Enneagram, like this is the best time to be alive.
And it's all fucking cheap relative to other shit out there. Like, we're not yet offering little piece of paper that say you're certified, but like I guarantee you the shit you'll learn from this stuff is so much better than anybody that's certified.
And also the Enneagram is still being revealed, and we're doing some of the revealing.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're finding things. We're finding new things about trifixes and stackings and, the whole attachment versus hexad and all that stuff. I mean, it's cutting edge.
Well, one thing that made me really happy is just to see like a random person will ask a question in the group that the average baseline knowledge of the average active group member just being, taking in, just taking in what, is available, that they're so knowledgeable that they're far more knowledgeable than like the average fucking Enneagram teacher that I've met at IEA.
Exactly.
Like the people's understanding because of the exposure to really accurate and good information that the average person can help you in our group for free.
Yep.
And so DAA is only $19 a month. Like it's a library of so much content to learn from for only $19 a month. I mean, this is an unheard of deal. And so it's like, if you really want to learn the Enneagram, like our group is by far the best. It's not even bragging. It's facts.
Yeah.
Yeah. Agreed completely. Listen to Josh's podcast.
Oh yeah.
Josh Levine.
Amazing social type who can actually ask questions and get people to talk to people.
He knows how to speak.
He knows how to talk to people.
He interviewed the three of us. So, if you can't stop listening to us, you need to hear more when you're not getting your download of this shit.
You need to be obsessed with us.
Yeah.
The interesting thing about the format of his interviews is like, maybe I haven't seen an interview where it was just someone asking about John or someone asking about me. So it's like a one-to-one sort of like direct, pure hit of that person's whole deal. So it's interesting to watch it from that perspective. It's like, what is it like to actually talk to me one-on-one versus me and a group of people?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
You're not really talking to me. You're not really talking to me one-on-one. I'm just blasting on your face. Just ranting for 15 minutes and then, Josh gets to ask a question now and then I rant for another 15 minutes.
Anything else? David's Trifix.
Oh yeah, Trappy's booklet, yeah.
Still selling well and appreciate all the support.
And is that it?
You talk about Alexandra's astrology shit?
Oh yeah, Alexandra's doing astrology readings. And she is, if you've listened to her at all, you know how deep her Enneagram wisdom is, and she knows the astrology extremely well. She, in the whole fucking world, is the leading authority on astrology and Enneagram and how they're interrelated. And this
She's
is like
the only authority.
The only authority.
Exactly.
So, somebody else will start being better at some point at like infographics on Instagram and maybe like try to take that little throne, but they'll never have as good as her shit. So she's doing sessions for minimum $120 an hour, but I'm trying to get her to do more. And astrology is not just telling you this is what you're like. It also talks about like a developmental path and your Enneagram type. There's a relationship type in your astrology, but your Enneagram type, your relationship to your Enneagram type structure is going to determine a lot of whether you're able to actualize the potential of what you're here to do. And astrology, I think personally, relates to essence.
Mm-hmm.
And like,
That's interesting.
I was actually doing in the study group today, talking about like the automatic world and the sensitive world, and it's like the do re mi fa sol la si do.
Mm-hmm.
That's based on the ray of creation, and like Do, Dominus, Re is Regina Coeli, which is the moon. Me is Mixtus Orbitus, the Earth, the mixed world. And then the next world up is Fatum, fate. And in the Gurdjieff scheme, it's called all planets. And it's like the level of your fate, or the essence, is influenced by the like whatever planets represent in this scheme. So anyway, there's there's one little 9 who's the queen of all that, and hit her up on either Instagram, Angry Enneagram 9, or I am Alexandra AA, or on her Facebook or something.
She channels it all through her curly floof.
Curly floof that goes in all directions to all parts
directions.
of the universe.
It represents the
all-
universe.
Yeah.
Every single direction possible.
Yeah, it's more like a neural network.
That's
on her
it.
head.
That's what her brain actualized in the hair manifestation.
Yeah, it's a little dispersed like a 9, but it like collects all the wisdom.
Yes, it's a wisdom gatherer.
I mean, one thing that maybe you're saying this, but about the rejection thing is that rejection types, what they're rejecting is themselves, right?
Yes.
Like parts of themselves. And so when it comes to like sexual 8, like it's not just I need to occupy your attention necessarily. It's like I'm cutting off the other parts of me that are not this energy bringer attraction tool. And so it's kind of like sexual 8 can be like somebody is vibing with their energy there with their, like, oh, I'm really attracted to you, Emeka, you're sexual 8, I can see your display and whatever. But as sexual 8, it's like I'm like, oh, okay, that's what it is. Like I'm not realizing I need you to like see my heart, or I don't even put my heart forward enough for myself to know I need you to see my heart. I'm just like, here's the energy, here's the energy.
Yeah.
Well, it's almost like it's that energy, that appreciation for that energy and what it accomplishes or the impact that it has might be interpreted as, oh, I'm as heart, as like,
Exactly.
oh, I see your heart and I really appreciate you as a person, when at the end of the day, the rejection types are basically ensuring that you never actually do that. You never actually get there. Because I was, thinking about, or I watched Jesse's video with Josh Living. Jesse's Social 5, who got interviewed by Josh, really illuminating. And we attribute so much of the withholding, because that's the fixation of 5, to 5. And I realized all the rejection types are doing the same thing. It's just, it's more amplified because, 5 is saying, I'm not a person at all. Like, you're not even going to be able to touch me. You can only approximately connect to me through this symbol or this abstraction, but there's no me to connect to. And I realized, 2 and 8 are doing like, I'm only half a person. I'm ensuring that you never feel like you're a part of me. Like that's the 8, you never, and 2 is also doing a version of that too.
Well, I was in Seattle with my my family, with Alexandra and stuff, and my mom's too, and observing her. It was like with rejection types in general, when they don't do some work on themselves, and I mean this is true for everybody, but I think there's something particular about the rejection thing, that they can seem like one note or one dimensional, and it's like things cannot go outside of the like outside of the zone where they feel that they can
This one thrust.
Right.
Sorry?
One thrust. There's
one thrust, and it's through their dominant center.
Yeah.
And so it's like, 2, it's like sometimes how things would always come back, or like not be able to go outside the bounds of a certain offering kind of dynamic.
Yeah.
And it was sort of like, I remember thinking like, man, can't my mom just like be a person for a minute?
Right.
Yeah, it was just always this thing, and like the leverage thing, and 2 is like, there's always this like, I'm the one helping you. It's always like a little step above.
Well, yeah, I want to point out that, we people rag on 2s quite a bit, and as much as 2s try to be loving and insert themselves in people's lives, a lot 2s end up alienating a lot of people. Why is that happening? It's because the rejection thing is that in order for me to exist with you, I have to find a leverage point, something that you need from me. And it's completely discounting that you might have in any sort of like, it's not a two-way street. It's just a one-way dynamic. And so that creates a sort of like, with, people don't realize how much twos are so interpersonal, and they really want to, but their whole personality is invested in finding a way into you in a way that they can help you. And all the three rejection types in their own way are doing their own version of, I need to be indispensable. Otherwise there is no dynamic. So what happens when there is no indispensable one-way dynamic? There is nothing.
Right.
So that's, and so what I'm trying to convey is that it's not this extreme, oh, this thing didn't work out, I'm going to cut off this connection. Rejection types are disengaging on micro levels constantly. Yeah. Like maybe I relate to you on this level and there's no, satisfactory dynamic that exists there. That part's gone. And I want to explain how reflexive it is. It feels like the part of me that was connected to this thing or might need this thing or might be affected by this thing is gone. It's like I forgot it. It's a literal forgetfulness of parts of me that could be affected or touched. And so,
as if the connection wasn't ever there in the first place.
It was never there in the first place. And it's hard to explain that with words, but I've been just reflecting on, like, I currently live with my sister, and I would assume that we are probably the closest to my family, but my family's a rejection heavy family. And so there's this sense of separateness that I just taken for granted. But like, you got two eights living together, and you might assume that we would interact and do things together or whatever. But it's as if I was still in another state. Which,
yeah.
And part of that is just like, it's just double independence with the eight. And I was just realizing, oh, this is what happens when the eight personality just runs unchecked, or any rejection type, is that there are all these micro-disengagements that's been happening in terms of like, oh, we plan to go do something, and all of a sudden she just drops it. Or there was something that we shared, or it's like she said we wanted to do together, and all of a sudden it's like this just complete erasing of whatever communal thing that was there. And it's happening on such a micro level that what it does over time is that it just isolates the person, in that I don't have there's no mutualness between us. There's no interdependentness. And I was just observing that. I was like, oh, I'm doing that too. Been in relationships, I got some feedback where I was told that I'm not a part of you. And I realized, I'm not really offering anything for you to be a part of in me. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I feel like, where that comes out, that part of you to, I don't know how you put it, like the part of you to be part of you, is your heart center.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like, I think all three types are sort of doing that is, like, basically, like, I was in an exchange with somebody who was, talking about fives and their passion of avarice, which means they have no energy and they're low energy. And they were describing a 9, and arguing that it was 5.
Right.
And it's like, fives are exhausting. Like,
yeah,
they get drained easily.
Strong.
Sorry?
It's high strong. It's
super high strong.
Taut energy. Yeah.
Yeah, we were in Seattle, and we hung out with Lee. Yeah, I do. And she's great. And we used to hang out when I was in college, and would sleep on her floor and stuff. And it was great. But it's like, oh yeah, like fives are intense. Yeah. And I have a 5 client, and my dad's a 5, stuff like this. And it's like, I've gone back and forth with if my dad's a 9 or a 5 a lot. And then being in a family situation for a week where my sister's got her 9 boyfriend and I've got my 9 girl, and like realizing like my dad never sits still, and it's very like, what's going on? What's happening? Like,
it's not low energy. 5 is not.
And it like brought back all the I have a kind of a view of my dad being chill now because I don't live there anymore, but he's got a 9 fix, but God, that was the thing growing up, is like I never felt I could like relax. It was just this like, got to move something out in the yard. He loves the yard, got to do this, got to do blah, blah, blah. It's like, and it'd be like all of a sudden really abrupt, like, John, time to wake up. You have to do this thing, and she's like, what? My little introverted nervous system was like, I can't,
Yeah. I remember watching Jess's interview, and Josh, it's interesting to watch Josh get affected by the personality structure of the person who's interviewing and where it's placed, because you get sucked into their world. And Jesse's world is very intellectual. Like, you get the sense that of a brain that's completely disconnected from everything else, and it's really high strung. Like, and so like 5 energy feels like this is a pure stream of head center.
Yeah,
no doubt, it's a head center.
I haven't watched any of the. We were talking about Josh's podcast. What's it called? What It's Like to Be You.
Yeah.
Anyway, everybody should watch those. Or listen to him or whatever. But like Alexander was listening to Jesse's. And we love Jesse.
Mm-hmm.
But like Alexandra, I'll stay at my desk and just sit here. She goes around the house and or the apartment, does things, and she was listening to Jesse, so she'd have to turn Jesse's off sometimes because it would be overwhelming for her.
Overwhelming. Mental energy, it's a lot.
Poor little 9 just like, Jesse went,
And it's like these little with the 5 mental energy, it's like these inner caves of intellectual intellectual caves
pouring into you.
Yeah. So it's intense in the sense that it's not like outward exploratory like a 7 might be, or even 6 pinging from thing to thing. It's very much like drilling down, and it just feels like really intense mental energy. It's a lot to just withstand for a long time.
I used to play a video game called Turok, and it was really dumb, but there was this weapon called the cerebral bore where you would shoot on an enemy, and it would just revelate having this drill through its head, and would shoot out brain fluid and then just explode or something, whatever. But that term cerebral bore is very 5, just like this. Yeah. It's just the rejection types. The thing to offer you is like a penetration. It's like a hooking in.
Yeah, David, you had that thing, or you talked about the 2 overlap with sexual social. That was pretty good.
Oh yeah. What did I say? I don't remember it now.
You're on your schema. Yeah.
What did I say?
That 5 and 8 are over
5 and 8 overlap with the 2 self-preservation stackings. So that kind of makes sense that there's a clear wall with 5 and 8. 5 overlaps with SPSX and 8 overlaps with SPSO. And 2 is their version of it is penetrating it. 2 overlaps with sexual social in the schema, and so 2 is penetrating others with the backup, so to speak, of social, which is the social good, right? I'm penetrating you for your own good. And it's disregarding self-pres, so it's self-pres last. It's disregarding that there are boundaries in a way.
Yeah. Yes.
Right. And so that's the way that it's kind of self-pres blind.
Mm-hmm. So. And we've been, in DAA, sign up for DAA at anygrammar.com. We've been having a lot of discussions about, fleshing out some of these stackings and sexual socials. An interesting one, that it's impersonal penetration. And that's a good way to sort of describe what 2 is doing as a rejection type, is that it's trying to get that heart leverage. And 2s get in trouble because they what makes them not attachment types is that the 2 has their box of or bag of what they might care for you with. Yep. And what happens is that once they decide that what I have is what you need, even though that might not be the case. And so that's sexual social can do this thing with the sexual instinct backed by social is this really idealistic sort of love bomb where I'm penetrating you, and it's the attraction is elevated, with the social to become this really idealistic symbol of a mating dance. And I guess I was seeing that it can feel impersonal because of the social instinct. where it's like it's less about like sexual self-pres, making it about like just me and you, but it's like the love now becomes like a more of a symbolic thing.
And impersonal makes sense here because, as we're saying, the two has their own set of tools, just like a few things, and they're going to use those, and it's not related to you almost. Right?
Yeah.
The other thing this is making me think of, though, too, something we brought up before is the psychic structures thing with Riso Hudson, which is one of the great Riso, I don't know, discoveries or teachings or whatever. And it's these drawings that somewhat give you a sense of the engine, if you will, of each of the types and how and sort of almost the physics of what's going on, and the different layers of the personality and unconscious and all that stuff. And if you look at the drawings for the psychic structures for 2, 5, and 8, it's this thrust energy through the center, like a thick phallus coming up from the unconscious. You know what I mean? It's fully gathered and just force.
They illustrated with a big red arrow. That's like when they're doing the rejection types, you start with a big red arrow of energy.
Yeah.
Rejection types are dicks.
That's it.
Well, that's it. You know, so I wanted to get related to that. I just finished listening to the pod you recorded when I was in Seattle.
Okay.
And I think y'all made some comment or joke about, you know, the way that like we did like a hashtag not all twos or whatever, and then one of those guests was a delightful angel that we'd like to have back on.
Yes.
And the other one was not. And I would like Alex Drew to come back, though. I think she'd be really good to talk about because she talk with about her experience in the offering space, because like I find her just so like just, you know, like we're talking about like sort of this impersonal quality. And maybe she's just really good at hiding it, but I find her very personal and very easy, and I don't find her playing agenda games, you know, things like that. But
it's interesting. 2 minus social, which is her deal. That's a big one. Factor there.
What I was getting at though is that like rejection is very penetrating, but I think people like when it comes to intellectual penetration, like 5. It's kind of like you can go away and you just you know, turn them off or whatever. And then and the 5 also does not want to be around you that much either. And then with 8, it's like sometimes there's some 8s that you just like cannot shut out or go away from. But you can kind of be like fuck off, you know, like there's a physical, you know, it's body energy penetration, so it's like you can kind of put up a boundary, or you just like leave, right? But then the heart center penetration is different because, you know, I like when we love somebody, we say they're in our heart, and so like heart center has this sticky, being touched quality. And so I think why people can have like why we can dunk on 2s or whatever, people can be like, oh, 2s are this. Like I think Nancy was like, oh, I don't like 2 men or something. You know, there is a way in that 2s have to. It's not like 2s suck or something, but it's just that heart center penetration is really it's a different quality. You know,
it's kind of one way to say it is it's liquid, and so someone is stirring into your waters, and so you can't separate out the waters again. And you were just describing an easy pullback, so to speak. You know, with 5 and 8, relatively speaking. But with 2, once you've stirred waters, that's you can't. It's harder to retract from that.
And that should be said for all the heart types. As a heart last, we did that episode, "Heart is an Ocean," and what really inspired that was me just being alarmed at how much heart fucking emotional upheaval a certain heart type could generate. And we did the Tinder Swindler. So to see the 3 version of, you know, how a 3 can whip up a lot of heart energy. And so when you get a rejection heart stance, so you get this penetrating energy with, you know, with that heart emotional fucking, you know, that whole deal. that's some really, at least it feels that way to me, is like that's a really vulnerable space to be playing around in, or just to be operating in. So when it feels like something's off, and I think a lot of people, I mean, we've mentioned that people don't understand heart types because there's not a lot of frame reference for heart types. I think that's why a lot of twos end up provoking a lot of people and pissing people off, because it's like, this is really penetrating energy in the heart, in the space that people aren't really comfortable with.
I mean, it's like continuing the metaphor of the heart. I mean, they're at your life blood. They're at your pulse. You know what I mean? And that's what it often feels like with twos, especially. It's like twos are sort of almost wanting to have their hands around your heart and they're pumping it or something. It's that feeling.
Yeah.
So like for twos listening that are cringing or hating us or whatever, I think what's really important, I mean, this is true for all rejection types, but I think for two, they might have the most motivation to put this particular piece into action. But it's like, take note if you have relationships where it's either not about exchange, it's just about like appreciation and mutual enjoyment, or it's like, you know, if the playing field, so to speak, is even, if you're not just like fixing the wings of broken wings of birds or something, like if there's a way that you're in a place of continual receiving as much as you're giving, like that's a red flag, just not as a self-judgment thing, but just like twos need to be aware. Like, am I kind of the one holding the cards in all these dynamics, or am I the one giving and offering? If I'm not in a place of receiving without going like, oh, thank you so much. Like don't make a show of your gratitude either. Or you're like trying to like pay it back with this display of gratitude. It just let it be a natural flow. And that's where like two drops into like entering like the body zone. They just become part of like the flow of things instead of this like undulating heart like neutron star.
Well, one thing that, just to address the sort of confusion that people were having, like a lot of self-pres types have an ethos of independence. I don't want to depend on anybody. I want to be my own sort of self-contained survival machine. And so some people listening to this might relate to a lot of the rejection type stuff. Sounds like rejection. So I was just wondering if we could throw that around a little bit to sort of make the distinction between the self-pres sort of independence, instinctual independence, versus what rejection types are doing, which to me is more like saying rejection is more like I'm trying to maintain an untouchableness in different ways. Like 5 is completely not here. 2 is only offering the nurturing function, and 8 is only offering the protecting. And so you're only getting half a person. So the idea of closeness, the idea that you would even see me or appreciate me outside of what I'm bringing, is a completely foreign concept. So I'm trying to make a distinction between that and self-pres.
Well, for somebody confused about it, like you have to look at the centers, because what the rejection types are doing is over-identifying with the giving or offering or expelling one center. Self-pres autonomy is like, I can meet life as it comes up. I can have the skills and independence and just like groundedness. Sorry?
Resources,
and I can like recognize myself as a body. Like, self-pres blinds don't see themselves as a body in time and space. So like I can handle myself. Whereas the rejection thing is not so much about handling myself, right? It's like, it is about contact and the lack of contact, but also what I produce that makes me a person.
I think the concept of love or togetherness is like, in the sense of like someone who truly loves you without expecting anything in return. So much of the rejection deal is like everything's a negotiation. Everything is a negotiation. If I'm being approached by someone, it's like, well, you want something, and I'm only going to engage with you if I want something from you, and we're going to negotiate. And it's either a good deal or it's a good deal or a deal that you can't refuse. That's from the 8 perspective. Is like if it's just not an indispensable deal that you can't say no to, then why am I even here? Like it has to have that much impact. Otherwise, there's nothing going on here. So I just realized that growing up that the sense of togetherness is not, if you have a family full of a lot of rejection types, that's really not going to feel like a family. And that's what I've recognized what my family is. I've got an 8 dad, a type 2 mom, and there's 2 other 8s in the family. So the family culture is this sort of like, it's assumed separateness. And I want to just like unpack how subtle and pervasive that is, in the sense that, like, for example, my dad has an English name. I don't know what it is.
Wow. There you go.
And my dad, his generation of men fought in the Nigerian Civil War, the Biafran War, back in the, I don't know, is it the 50s or 60s? And so he was a teenager when he had that experience. Now you'd be thinking, oh, that's really interesting. Surely you've had some conversations about this since your childhood. Have no fucking idea. I don't know who he is.
Right.
I have no.
This
Go ahead.
reminded me of the sexual 8 that I've brought up a few times. She was triple rejection, 852, and even telling somebody her first name was like a huge deal. like she didn't want anybody to know her name anywhere online.
To be even like
now
Nines,
we're revealing it to the world.
Like Nines talk about not wanting to be perceived. Like there's an attachment type thing of not really wanting to be located, and the rejection thing is not wanting to be touched. And so to the point where his own son or children don't even know him. So like a year ago, my dad called me and said that I should come over to the house. And I'm like, he just asked me to come over there. We should talk. And I'm like, we don't talk. So I went to the house and we were sitting down in his room, and he said, I feel like, I should tell you about myself. And I'm like, what? And so he proceeded for the next 2 to 3 hours, basically give me his entire history of his childhood. Yeah. Like I wish I could have recorded it, because it was like, it's like I got the full download of who my dad was at 38 and he's 72.
Wow.
So he told me what it was like to fight in the Civil War, told me what it was like to grow up as a kid, just all these different things that it's like, oh, this is him as a person finally being revealed to me after I've become a full adult. So like there's this way that both my parents, even my mom is a 2, it's like, I don't really know you. There's no real sense of connection. And me as a rejection type, it's like, yeah, that makes sense. This is just how people relate to each other.
Right.
Yeah.
So the idea that someone could love me, like actually see me, is such a like, besides what I bring, because my entire family is just like, these negotiations that we're all making to exist and to care about each other. It's like, I'm only an object to these people in terms of how much I align with their view on how the world is. So there's complete, there's no sense of togetherness whatsoever. So, the idea that someone could actually genuinely see me and love me and appreciate me for who I am, not what I bring to the table, that's a very difficult one for me to accept.
That's super interesting because, like this is the second like family trip Alexandra's been on, and her as a triple attachment social type, watching the dynamics in my family, which is my parents are both self-pres social rejection types, and then I have 3 siblings, one's a 3, the other 2 are 6s, so there's like 3 attachment types, and there's I'm the one frustration type. And so like one of the ways Alexander described it was like there's so much separation in my family despite all the attachment types, because the attachment types attach to the separation.
That's right.
And my baby sister, who listens to this pod, I guess, which is terrifying because for all kinds of reasons. Shout out to Lulu. Look up Lucy Lukovich on Instagram. Her art is incredible. But yeah, like, Lulu is like, she is keeps involved with my parents a lot. And she's kind of the glue of my whole family. She's the youngest. But, yeah, like, you 2 both know some of my like issues and jealousies and stuff like this. And, I have rejection fixes, but being this attachment, being a frustration type, it was like separation was like so normal and so ubiquitous, but I like really needed love, like as this heart type, and this frustration heart type. And so like I think some of the ways that I have clung to things, and like when you, Emeka, spoke to when someone gets in, I put them like the leash gets really long, like I reject until the leash like something like that. You said some kind of thing of like when they get in, you'll tolerate a lot. I resonate with that because it was like I perceived that connection and love was like so not in this universe, like, and it wasn't that my parents didn't love me or something, but it was like the rejection quality was so it was so ever present that it didn't feel like I could get the heart level floor frustration thing I needed. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. It feels like the rejection stance inevitably just isolates. Like it feels like you can't ever feel part of this person or really be with this person. And like, David, or I don't know if you said that, or John, you said that the attachment types in this family end up just attaching to that sort of like separateness. And I've got a 3 sister who like everyone has this relational dynamic or relational template, even her. Like she doesn't talk to anybody in the family. At this point right now, she is not in communication with anyone in the family. So, and I think Alexander made a comment about like the relational template that's created with our parents and how that just becomes what we recreate and we're looking for in every relationship after that. And, even if you're not a rejection type, if you have 2 rejection parents, I mean, that's just going to be the template that you know.
Right. So what does being touched mean as a rejection type? What, like, you said, talk about the fear of being touched. Like, what does that mean? What is that fear experience? And then also, I'm curious about your level of awareness in the cutoff of things. You know, like, because I think that what happens to a lot of rejection types is they cut and they cut and they cut and they kind of just like, it's like having a full pie and then having like a very thin slice to actually be able to stand on. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Okay. Because I try to explain. I've explained this to you. When I was going through a certain event that won't be named. Of my just experiencing my own sort of like self-amputation in the moment, as if it was happening, as a sort of like a defense mechanism. So the way I would describe it is like, for me, like when I engage with anybody, it's sort of like, let's come to a negotiation table. You have your pieces, I have my pieces. We are going to put our pieces to the center, and we're going to decide right now what we're both bringing, and I'm going to be okay with that. You're going to be okay with it. This is a good deal. Cool. So that's the dynamic. That's the dynamic we're going to have now. So what usually happens is people start changing the agreement. Like, and as a hexat type, one of the things I told Josh is that H are really not happy when you change the agreed upon negotiation. I've experienced
Whereas attachment is going to assume there's some wobbliness in the agreement in the first place.
Right. And so it's like, for me to even engage with you, we negotiated a deal. Like I bring this, you bring this, and that's what's going to be. So when you start fucking with that, like the rejection piece is like, all right, I have to completely start over. And so the me that I showed up in this, because to me, rejection is like, I had to delete certain parts of me to make this deal with you. Like because it's not you. I mean, for me, it's like, in order to make a certain deal, like your only part of me is going to be here. So if I had to give up or amputate parts of myself to make a deal with you, and now you're fucking with the dynamic, now it's like, it's like the feeling is like, oh, I'm not even here. Like it feels like the part of me that I presented is gone, and it feels like parts of me start falling off, and
it's like the part of you that you presented is your space to be here. So when it's changed, you're not here anymore.
You're not here anymore. It just drops off. And the way that I started noticing that for myself is, let's say we get into a relationship, and there was sort of an agreed dynamic that I understood that we had, and that dynamic is revealed to be non-existent, or it's changed. I feel myself disappearing from that relationship. I feel like the part of me that could care about this thing is gone. It's going, and it's not like people might hear that and think, oh, you just cut this person off, and it's this thing where it feels like when you change the initial negotiation, which to me was already a fucking, you're only getting this part of me, and I said, all right, this is what I have to give up to be in this dynamic. And you start fucking with that, it's like, oh, you didn't even get it. You didn't even see me. You didn't even fucking, it's like this whole thing was just. And so I'm trying to describe like this feeling of like, it feels like parts of me are just falling off. Like the part of me that could care, the part of me that could even recognize this thing is important, it's gone. And that's the defense mechanism of rejection, like this reflexive disengagement that happens when, and I guess what's the fear? What happens? Well, it feels like it threatens the whole thing. It threatens the whole system, because the system is like, only part of me gets to be here, right?
What's the system?
The whole rejection system, because it's set up to maintain that I don't get touched. That part of me doesn't get touched, or I don't even believe.
Yeah, you're only providing this one thing or this small set.
Like,
and if we're not doing that anymore, then what is this?
There is nothing. So it's the rejection system is there to ensure that I don't get touched.
Is it that the system, is it like then I'm obliterated or something? Like when it's talking about the system being like, I don't know how to put this. It's not like contaminated necessarily, but like if you get touched and the system gets fucked with, is it like what's left of me or something?
I'm trying to find the right words for what the feeling is. Well, I think what it feels like is that in order for me to feel like I exist in something, in a relationship or whatever, these things that I'm bringing, that's me. Like, like let's say within the Enneagram world, I bring this, and this. I bring typing. I bring these sort of like a certain approach to it, and that's me. And if somebody shows up and says, oh, I'm really into this, your thing, and it's like, okay, they're recognizing me as a person. So let's say that they flip that, or they say, actually, no, the thing that I appreciated about you, my offering, I don't really vibe with that anymore. It feels like, oh, I was never even here. We're not even on the same plane. That's what it feels like. It feels like I have a very limited sense of what my personhood is. It's a very limited sense of what my personhood is. And so when that is not seen or appreciated, or the dynamic is shifted, it feels like there was never any relationship or dynamic with my personhood at all.
So is it like being erased, or is it like, oh, all this was like a fucking lie?
Both. Like I wasn't even there.
And that you were just, the other person was just projecting onto you, and that like just missing you. Is that the feeling?
What's the word? This person never even encountered me. It feels like, they never even encountered me. So like my relationship with my parents is like, we're just related. Right. It feels to me like my parents don't have a fucking clue who I am. Not even they don't, it's not even that they don't have an interest in knowing who I am. They don't have the capacity to grasp who I am. That's what it feels like when shit like this happens. Is like, you don't even have the capacity to know what I am. Like we're not even the same species of human. That's what it feels, so separate. Like it feels
that's where like the rejection, like just I can walk away. So comes from, because it never happened. The thing that happened never happened.
It never happened. That's what's going on. It's like, I'm not cutting you off because I'm having this reaction to something there. It's like we never even touched each other.
Yeah, it's like a retro amputation.
Yes. And it's hard to it's hard to convey, because I don't think, we do hundreds of typings a year, and we've just started recording the typings this year, and vast majority, like 80 at least 80% of the people we type are attachment types. And most attachment types have frustration wings or influences. Mm-hmm. So rejection, like sort of like the heart center being like people don't have a frame of reference for heart center. People don't have a frame of reference for rejection. If you're not, if you don't have a rejection wing or like a secondary rejection fix, like what I'm talking about might sound like I'm, like you might still not get it. But what I'm trying to convey is like, it never happened. We never even touched each other. You never even fucking got me.
So, when we did breath work together, you experienced some grief for like a relationship that was like way in the past.
Yeah.
And you like saw this girl's face in your mind, this sort of stuff. And so is it kind of like rejection types have to sort of see how, this retroactive, what was the term we used for retroactive?
Amputation.
It's like, oh, there's still actually a part of me that's like related, or that's actually not amputated or something like that, or like there's
because it's not real. I just want to make that point that this thing that I'm describing, it's not like obviously I was there and my parents do see a part of me, but it's like this is what it feels like to me.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not like, of course, so it's like I'm pushing away from the parts of me that were actually seen or touched by doing this.
So it's like recovering these like fragmented, cut off pieces in a certain way is like what needs to happen to not get stuck on that little sliver of an island of self, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Also, I wanted to say, like, when you say the word feels, even like it feels like I'm assuming you're not talking about emotion. You're not talking about some bad feeling that you had. It's you mean it almost in the body sense.
Yeah.
Of what this feels like at a body center level as an experience.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just like a reflexive amputation that's happening on micro levels. And I've heard some rejection types even describe like, maybe it doesn't mean necessarily you cut this person off, but maybe you're still engaging with them. But it's like this part of me that was engaging with you is not available anymore. Mm-hmm. Like it's not available to you anymore, and it never will be. It's like maybe certain aspects of the dynamic, rejection types are doing micro-disengagements from people, so they might still remain connected, but it's like you're not ever going to be able to touch that part of that person again because it's gone.
So what does this like micro-disengagement look like from the lens of 2? Because like it's pretty obvious in 8 and 5 to me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'll give you an example because my mom alienates a lot of people, and my mom is like typical 2. She's got, I think, assertive fixes 7 and 8. So she's very penetrating. She wants to find ways that she can be of service to people and help people, but what happens is when people those that she's helping don't comply with her vision of what she believes they should do, or they start doing their own thing, she gets really nasty. Like she can get really mean, in terms of when things aren't going her way and people aren't complying with her care project for them. I've seen her do some fucking like really mean shit just to
care project.
It's like, you're part of my care project now, and if you don't comply with my wishes, like now how she pulls the rug from underneath people.
Yeah.
And this is why I'm the only one who talks to her at this point of all the kids, because she does these things that or come out of nowhere where it's like, I didn't want you there. I didn't want you to make this decision for me. And so she ends up alienating people because she'll retaliate. What was your original question? I fucking forgot.
How does it look for 2?
The micro-disengagement.
Okay, so the macro-disengagement is that when people don't comply, she just drops them. And it seems really cruel for such a helpful person, how vindictive it can feel like when she, she's helping somebody and then they don't comply and she just pulls the rug from the whole thing. But 2, it's like, I guess the way I look at it is I don't really know my mother.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't, like it's just a one-way kind of relationship. And it's hard to describe, well, because I just see it as a flip side of what my dad is doing. It's like, he's got a wall up and I don't know things about him, but I was like, you know what? I have the same thing with my mom. I don't know what she's done. Like we don't really connect, if that makes any sense.
It seems like the opposite pole of having leverage is not showing vulnerabilities, and which is not showing your humanness. It's just all three types.
It's not a two-way street. That's really what I've been trying to understand about my family, is that there's no two-way street dynamics or togetherness with anybody. It's only everyone is angling for a one-way dynamic, which is not connection at all.
Right.
So if my mom isn't attempting to help or find out information about what I'm up to, gossip or whatever else, like I don't have a dynamic with her. So my mom, I mean, I'll show up to the house and I'll say hello, and both my parents still continue to do what the fuck they're doing. I'm just, sitting there.
Yeah, that's my parents too. Yeah. So this might get at it, like in terms of maybe micro-disengagement. I'm not sure, but this came up, in Seattle, where my grandma's like 90 something and just like super old and a 9, and my mom was commenting on, like we'd go over to my grandma, try to help her out and bring her to doctor's appointments and stuff like this. And my mom was commenting on, that my grandma being so old and being not able to move very much, how small her world's gotten. And so she gave the example that my grandma won't let anybody else run the dishwasher. It's like this control, this is like my turf kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom said something like, my mom made a joke like, if I ever get like that, just put me down or something like that. And then I said, my mom is an amazing cook. And I remember when I was getting with Alexandra, and I saw some meme about like a romantic partner who's like not white going to a white family's house and having to eat their shitty food
with unseasoned chicken,
unseasoned food. And I was like, I remember being like, oh, well, my mom is a great cook, so I'm like relieved, and like whatever. So so my mom made this big deal of getting this like very specialized oven, like a whole thing. Like it's oven stove thing. It's like French and all. I mean, it was like a huge multi-year acquisition thing. I don't understand it. It's like it's like a 2's version of a 5's laboratory.
Oh yeah,
right.
yeah.
There you go.
And self-pres too. And my mom says, like, if I ever get obsessed with something like a dishwasher, like put me down. And I said, of course. I said, and then I said something like, yes, Mama, your stove is really beautiful. Like, it's like in the same vein, right? Like,
we should have put you down a long time ago.
And my mom got like immediately offended and like did not see the joke.
Oh,
like she didn't see the humor or something.
Right.
And I apologized, like try to explain, like, but she like got like it was, and I thought like, I don't know if that's like a micro-disengagement or something, but there was something in there that I thought was really interesting, where it was like, maybe like I was like palling around with her on a certain like same plane wavelength or something.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know what it was, but it was like I was getting too close to her, things she cared about or things she might be insecure about. I don't know, but it was like,
no, that's something.
Or kind of like you're saying, like it's like you were doing sort of a peer-to-peer connection.
Maybe so, yeah.
Something.
And humor is like my dad's a cartoonist. Like it's a big part of my family, and so I thought it was like, it wasn't like my family's just this like that's basically when my family's together. That's the only way we connect, is just making jokes and making fun of each other. And so like that I don't know. I thought that was a super interesting place of disconnect.
Yeah, there's something there. With, I'm just trying to think of like at times when my mom has gotten mad at me, and I'm just thinking about how all the rejection types have like a very specific kind of dynamic that they expect to have with people, that just or certain parts of them that you're not allowed to touch. And I remember there was one time my mom was, this was a long time ago, telling me about some sort of disagreement that she was having with my dad, and I think I responded that it was her fault or something like that, and she flipped out.
Wrong answer.
Because she was coming to me for support or something like that. But she got more mad than I've seen her, because I mean, maybe she was offering something that was vulnerable to me, and maybe she thought I would be support, and I just thought, I think you're in the wrong here, and she flipped out. But I see in ways that my mom doesn't have a lot of friends, or she seems pretty isolated for someone who's so interpersonal, because this sort of shit happens a lot. Like, people might veer into certain areas where she's not comfortable engaging with, and she will drop that connection or disengage that part of herself from being able to be engaged with that person. So I see that my mom does like disengage quite a lot. Like, for example, if she's going to a thing and she brought some food and the person doesn't thank her, it's like, well, I'm never bringing food to that person again. I've heard her say this multiple times. I remember like one time I was not invited to a wedding of a family friend, and I told her about it, and she was like, you know, it was just like a rejection conversation that we had, where it's like, why would you ever go to a thing that this person ever did if you weren't invited? Why, you know, because she were like, you know, why would you show up to a wedding that you weren't invited to? It's like if you don't comply with a certain expected dynamic that we have, I'm just completely disengaging from you. Like, that was reinforced over and over again within my family.
Mm-hmm. I was really close to two who worked with people, and like I was like, she trains people and stuff. And part of what I saw a pattern with her was that she'd train people and like really be able to imbue really powerful skills in people, like really develop them. But then she had a really, really difficult time when you know, like inevitably a student becomes like a peer. If you're a good teacher, right? Like if you're teaching well, then people learn from you and they learn what they can learn, and they get at your level or close, or, you know, whatever. But she had a really hard time with that. And when it was that level of we're on the same page or same platform or something, it was like she didn't know how to maintain a relationship on that level, and needed to kind of keep people under her wing in a certain way. Mm-hmm. It was like, I guess, really scary and threatening, and would happen over and over and over again. It would just sabotage these relationships that when people got close with her, it would just get weirdly overly personal in like a weird, complicated way. And I don't know how to better describe it, but it was like, it's like kind of, I can be an angel, but I can't be a human kind of a deal. Anyway, I don't know if that even actually relates to what Emeka was just saying.
Yeah,
I thought it was, and then I thought about it for a second. I'm like, maybe I just went off my own thing.
I was going to mention, I don't know if this is related to anything either. Back in my teen years and early mid-20s, I had a sexual self-pres 2 friend, 278, 2 of the 3 wing. Really interesting, strange guy. But he's one of my favorite people, just in case you think all those people out there think I don't like 2s. He was actually one of my favorite friends, but he couldn't really get a good read on what I needed. And so I was often having to go back to him because he wasn't finding, you know, the thing that he could be doing for me on a regular basis. The one thing was just drugs. He was a drug specialist as far as like just having an assortment, and he'd always have the best quality stuff of all kinds of things.
I've been on mute this whole time. I was talking.
Been on mute. Oh, okay. Yeah, you've been on mute. Yeah, I was wondering.
I had a whole point. You guys like just started talking over me. I was like, wait.
Yeah. We were wondering. Yeah.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it was just, I don't know that there was much more to that. It's just that furthering that point of 2s have a certain, you know, thing that they're bringing, and if they can't figure out how you fit with that, they you know, they can just kind of cut off.
Okay, yeah. This is what I was saying while I was muted. I was saying that I think there's a way that all the rejection types are attached to having a control parental dynamic.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, does that apply to 5? I was like, you know what? It does, because it's like they're saying, I'm going to offer this abstract, you know, symbol that we can then connect to. There's a lot of control in that. And I was mentioning how even like, there's should be some kind of, like, John, you were speaking to, like, if you're teaching someone, at some point they become your peer. Like, so if you're a parent, at some point your kids become adults and you have to relate to them as peers on some level, and see them as adults. And what's the issue that's happened with my parents is that transition has never seemed to take place. And there was an incident recently where, both of my parents showed up unannounced to my sister's place, and was banging on the door. And my sister was so upset about that because it's just like such a breach. It's such a disrespectful thing to do in another adult. Like, and so there's this sense of like my parents still act like
Parents.
Yeah, like parents when we're all like full grown people with our own plans and shit to do and everything. So that there's a very limited way the rejection types feel comfortable engaging with other people, and these parental dynamics are there to maintain, like, only half of me gets to be here, and I can only engage with you in this sort of like leveraged withholding sort of dynamic.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's a really good point. And one of the things I always try to underscore for 5 that like seems to be like a gap in people's understanding of 5 is that how fucking controlling 5s are.
Yeah.
Like that was another thing I try to emphasize, like when I described avarice in my book. But like what I noticed about 5s, and it's different flavor than 9, but like when you talk or get into a topic that the 5 is not interested in, they just cut the fuck off.
Yeah.
Totally. They don't, like, 9 will maybe like check out, but they might engage in like this empty, like, yeah, that's nice, whatever,
Head nodding.
Yeah. But the 5 will just either completely shut down or just steer it in a direction that they think they care about. And it's this line 8 control thing where, the stinginess is like, I won't go where I don't want to go.
Yeah. It's reminding me of that. I think we brought it up in one of the DAAs. Somebody on the old Riso Hudson board used to call 258 power types.
Yeah.
I mean, it's another way to say what we've been talking about, leverage and that kind of thing. Control.
Yeah, and it's clearer to see in 5, but I'm just realizing how 2 and 8 are doing the same thing. Like the control of 8 is not coming from the place of I'm going to tell you what to do. Like what the control is coming from, there's only one way that we can engage. And if we're not engaging in that way, then there is no engagement. So it creates a separateness that, like, I'm only here if this sort of engagement, this limited engagement is here, or is once that's removed, it's like we don't have a relationship. So that's where the control is coming from. And with the 8, it's like I want to have this sort of like a indispensable impact where my existence is like the sun for your universe. So it's not like I'm exerting this much energy to take up all this space and psychological space. It's like I'm having inherently a very high leverage impact on you that sort of allows me to feel like, under pressure, whatever happens, I have an indispensable place in your life. And if that's not there, then there's really no relationship. And I think with all the instincts, 8s are looking for this indispensable leverage point where it's like I can sit back and my needs can be met.
Well, Emeka, you're indispensable to David and I.
Especially with your sexual instincts.
Hang on, Alexander just got home and I'm going to smother her and then I'll be right back.
Okay. Yeah, I was just hoping that, I can help people understand rejection more, because I don't think there are a lot of people, if they don't have a rejection wing or a rejection fix, like this might seem like some foreign language.
The thing about all of this stuff is it stays a foreign language until people have actual interactions and relationships with 2s, 5s, and 8s. I mean, this has to be experienced, or it's just it's not going to impact until that. There aren't words
to describe this.
Yeah.
Like I had to date certain types to even really get it.
Right.
Like I didn't really understand knowing attachment to disconnect on an abstract level, that helps, but I had to experience it over and over and over again. Be like, okay, that's what that is. Or, like people experiencing what the control of 8 really is what that really feels like to be on a receiving end of a 2, 5, or 8. You know, like when you hear the word control, people might think, oh, this person's telling me what to do, or where they imagine that their boss who is demanding appreciations an 8. It's like, no, that's not what rejection types are doing.
That's right.
Rejection types are like, the thing where you might feel with an 8 is that it's like, I don't know how to get to this guy. I don't know. I don't feel connected to this person. And part of what the 8 is doing is like the vulnerability is that I don't want anyone to have leverage on me. So I don't want anyone or this person to think that they have any way to get to me.
Right.
So the defense mechanism becomes that if things aren't going well, every part of me that you thought mattered is gone.
Yeah. That's why I like the metaphor of armor for 8.
Yeah.
It's like you're not penetrating.
You're not touching me. And, you know, just, there was I don't know if this is a real story. It sounds like it was a real story. I don't know where I heard it, but this guy who's like a cartel person, and his enemies had found his family, and he knew that they were going to come after him. And so in order to prevent them coming after his family, I think he killed his family himself.
Yeah.
And so I felt that it was a good metaphor for what the rejection types are doing. That's
the extreme. Yeah.
It's like, I'm not going to let you have any leverage on me. I know that, you know, this part of me you think is how you're going to get to me. I'm just going to cut it off. I don't actually care about that part. Maybe I cared about it, but I completely forgotten why I even gave a shit about that. So in the end, it's like, you don't have any targets to come after.
That's hardcore.
And I see that I was seeing how I was doing it on a micro level in relationships. I mean, I've had conversations with you, John, about this, where it's like, maybe we started off in a relationship and this was the dynamic, and people start playing games in relationships where they start taking things away, you know, sort of get a reaction from their partner. And I started, you know, to step back and to see what I was doing is that if you take something off the chessboard or off the board that we had initially agreed upon, my innate reaction to that is I never cared about it.
Right.
I never cared about it.
Yeah.
And so you can see how that can keep going.
Right.
That sort of reaction can keep exponentially doubling on itself until there's nothing left.
This is, I'm trying to think, because I definitely see this in 8, and I'm seeing it in 2 in a different way. But, you know, like 2s will kind of rewrite like a relationship that they got burned by. But with 5, let's see, like there's something obvious about it, but there's something more subtle that I'm trying to get at. Like,
I feel like Jesse's interview was really good for illuminating some of what you're trying to get at. Because, you know, there was this thing that she was trying to describe of how she would offer an abstraction or an object that her and someone else could connect through. Yeah. But it's the expectation that it's probably not going to happen. And so it's like
talking about like offering an intellectual object.
Yes.
And so it's not her.
It's not her.
It's cut off.
The 5 thing is like, I'm never on the board.
Yeah.
Right.
But it's still like there's a, you know, disappointment where it's like, well, if you can't see or recognize, I think one thing she really spoke to is like, oh, if this person doesn't get it, it's like, oh, so it's expected, but it's so disappointing. And it's like, that's gone now. Like, that's never going to be a portal that we can connect through. And so, but it's from the assumption that I'm not even on the board. It's like, you can't even, there's no me here to be touched.
It's, I relate a lot, but it's like, there's still some me on the board, you know, like,
yeah.
If I'm presenting an idea, I am often presenting it like it's just an idea, but there's like some me in there.
Right.
But I feel like, let's see, attachment has the most hope.
Yes.
You know, like, oh, if this just happens and we adapt, we'll meet each other and it'll all work out. And then frustration has medium hope, where it's like, no, but maybe here.
Yeah. Rejection.
And rejection is not hopeless, but their hope is much, it's like pretty buried, you know?
Yeah.
And Yeah, that's interesting because
That would be a hope is an extreme vulnerability.
Extreme.
Yeah.
And that's the vulnerability piece. I think circling back to the question you asked about like what as a rejection type I'm protecting from, and is this vulnerability of like there's the heart space, the idea that I could open myself up to the possibility that someone could really actually see and appreciate me, to see my full personhood.
Mm-hmm.
It's so far away from what I think reality is, and to even open myself up to that is the greatest vulnerability I could ever expose myself to. So you can only imagine the sort of pain of getting a glimpse of that experience or hope, and to realize that it was never there. It's like, oh, that's really disappointment. Disappointing is not a good enough word to get at what that feels like, because it's like, I already know this is not this is not out there. It doesn't exist, and you had me believing that you did, but you never did. That feeling of that's the rejection thing. It's like that you could even touch me is something that I wouldn't expect in my life. So I allowed you to touch me, and it wasn't genuine or whatever. It's like, fuck.
Right. So how do you what's the way to like work with this, or like?
I mean, for me, I look at the blind spot and I look at the heart center. Like, I look at the combination of my blind spots and see that in order to continue this half a personhood withholding leverage thing that I'm doing, I basically have to continuously push away from my heart, and the idea that I could be appreciated or loved for who I am. And you bring in the social instinct in there, like my personhood being appreciated versus like what the function that I represent in people's lives. Because it just feels like the idea that it's not just a negotiation, that I'm actually appreciated for my existence, not my functioning.
Right.
The only reason I've softened up, my type structure has softened up in the last 5-10 years or whatever it's been, is because I've been the social instinct, is because I've been seeing my personhood, and allowing myself to be touched, allowing myself to be loved, and to love, and that shit has cracked me open. Just being able to allow myself to get into my heart and express how I feel. It's the most vulnerable thing I've ever done, and I think it's relaxed a little bit, the whole sort of like rejection separate thing.
And I think that's great, and I think that like when trapped, that we've been spending a lot of energy, I think, on twos, just because it look contradictory to say that twos, this relational connecting type, is actually very disconnected. But I think like twos can experience themselves as very sensitive and emotional, but often the way they're accessing their emotional center is not being touched in a certain way.
Right.
It's still it's like when that like it's not level playing field kind of thing, and so sometimes their emotionality, it's like we all image types can struggle with a real heart versus like the artificial heart or the fake heart or whatever. It's like there's a difference between their real heart and fake heart. So yeah, it's like, is the heart actually being touched, or is it like a reaction?
Yeah.
Or it's sometimes it's like theatrical or histrionic. With
histrionic is the word. Yes.
Yeah.
Because I made a distinction, maybe not on this pod, but that there's a difference between emotionality and heart.
Definitely.
That some types, especially like 2, can really whip up a lot of emotionality.
Right.
Even my mom, who might really seem caring because the emotional juice is there, but like really having your heart behind someone, that's a completely different thing in my experience. And I think that's what can really be what people can dislike about 2 sometimes, because you can get hooked by the emotional hooks that they've created, and maybe you realize like there's an agenda, and this person's heart wasn't really with me. Like and because it's a hard space, people get really upset.
Yes. Yeah.
Swindled, like the 3 is doing a 3 version of like swindling people with heart energy. I think 2s can get in trouble with that because they really do penetrate places that people care about.
All right. Well, feels good there.
I'd like to hear Courtney's thoughts on this.
Yeah.
Courtney, can you hear us?
Courtney. Sending signals.
Yes.
I'm glad I met her. She's pretty cool.
Totally.
Yeah, that was great that y'all got to you got to assemble.
All right, guys. That was a good one. We'll see.
Yeah, that was good. That was interesting.
We'll see if people get it or not.
Yeah, probably not.
Probably not. Because we're all social blind. We don't know how to communicate.
Right, exactly. Yeah. All right.
All right, guys.
Okay.
Later, y'all.
Bye.
Bye.